It is Maxwell with the Virtual World Society podcast. I am so excited to be here today with the man himself, CEO and co founder of VEDX, Jay Schnoor. Thank you so much for joining me on the Virtual World Society podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be able to chat about our work and all the work being done in immersive learning.
Yeah. And immersive learning is truly very, very exciting,
Hmm.
especially. I'm a little bit jealous of what kids get to experience now, especially in the K through 12 institutions and higher ed, and all these technologies that are available to them. Because I was so used to being, kind of maybe I'm willing to admit not the greatest student ever, and I got better over time when I joined my grad program. But I'm really jealous of all the amazing technologies that are available to students now with 3D learning and immersive learning using virtual reality and mixed reality. And I
Hmm.
want to go back to the beginning, especially of your career. Was there a time in your professional adventure and your professional journey where you realized you saw maybe some kind of immersive tech or some kind of potential to it, and it really excited you in the very beginning?
I did. I'll tell you on that note, I also wasn't the best student in high school. I had friends and wrestling and I just a B student, but it's because I was never engaged. I had to take out home homework and I had to do the work and I had to get grades. And I was never concerned about getting A's. I just kind of did enough to get my B's and went forward. And then I got engaged for the first time really in learning and knowledge seeking and asking questions when I got to Oregon State University and had a professor that I'll always attribute my entire learning life to, which is Professor Richard Clinton. And in the class, it was politics, and he looked at me and he said, "Us, there's a lecture. I'm going to say stuff you don't like, but I'm a professor. I'm here to profess. It's not the truth necessarily, but it is how I interpret the world to be." And I was like, "Oh, wow, nobody's ever said that to me." So that from that point forward, I just dug in, and I just knowledge was like I wanted to seek it, and so that had a pivotal effect on sort of my outlook on the world. And I today I go to the bus stop and I see kids looking down at their phones and they are in their pajamas and they're heading off to a school, and I'm like, wow. I mean, they're just so disengaged. A lot of them, not every one of them, but it kind of listless, hope and all this stuff. And so I really want to make a difference, taking my engagement and theirs. And the first time I engaged with the immersive learning side of things, obviously virtual reality has been around for a long time. It had giant headsets tethered to gaming computers, all the way back to the biggest one that way back when, and then it's had its up and downs in if it was going to become a technology or it was just going to remain sort of on the sidelines. And so that was interesting. But in 2015, I was working for Into University Partnerships. I was traveling around the world for that company, recruiting international students to the United States and the UK to the partnerships that we had with the universities. And during that time, one of the things that the students entering the university struggled with most was speaking English, not passing the exam to get into their program necessarily. Even if they did, it was speaking and being comfortable to speak. And I put on a virtual reality headset demo that was sent to me by UVisit Tours, and I was just blown away. I was like, it just transported me, even though it was like a plastic cardboard thing I slipped my phone into and it overheated at that time. I just was like, wow, this has so much potential. And so, I talked to the university to try to get a tour. Oregon State University got a tour, and with UVisit, still available on the website, which is great. Uh, but then in 2019, we all started talking at a innovation conference in the UK about what we could do to help our students with English in ESL. And it was, well, if they could practice with another avatar where you're not intimidated by their facial expressions, and you could practice speaking in a way that wasn't memorizing and regurgitating, but engaging and not without the fear. and we were gung ho on that, and then of course 2020 hit, and that innovation project sort of lost its legs, and I founded VEDX with four other founders, a couple of them from who were colleagues at Into, and off we went to try to develop immersive learning for students abroad, students at home, and that's sort of my entry point. Long
Yeah.
answer, sorry.
No, no, that was perfect. And there's so many points that I want to touch on, especially regarding what you said. It sounds like I love the brilliance of rethinking education,
Mm-hmm.
especially with the example that you gave of it's kind of easier to practice something if you're not really being impacted or distracted by their facial expressions, like they're immediate, or sometimes it can be involuntary. And I myself, I've been a professor for a number of years, and I've had to kind of learn to hide certain facial expressions or control what I look like, and that's so brilliant and so different from how traditional education has worked for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you feel that restructuring how we do education is a good pathway to integrating more of these technologies?
I do. That has a lot of arms for an answer. It's like a beast, right?
Yeah.
How our education system is so focused on testing and making sure the competencies are there. That's important. But the classrooms have gotten so overcrowded, and the teachers themselves, there was a study right here in my county that tried to assess how much actual prep time a teacher has today. They're using an average of 35 ed tech platforms in their schooling. I mean, you think about the LMS, the SIS, the Kahoot, the things that they have to deploy, just required to be efficient. But they've lost all their time. The teachers had 132 minutes in a week, and a lot of that was like between classes, and it
Yeah.
was crazy. And so really the problem that I want to see solved with immersive learning is saving teachers time. That's the problem. And I think the market, the technology market, the ed tech market, we really got to rethink if we want to help improve education and the system, I think we have to rethink about giving the teachers, the ones directly responsible for that knowledge and engagement, more time to actually get that done. And I think immersive learning right now has been clunky to deploy, and it's got a little ways to go, but it's not going anywhere. In fact, I think the engagement and the long-term memory retention that comes from it will produce ongoing immersion by educators.
It it's really interesting to see the different teachers that over time have started to kind of acclimate more to the idea and
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Can I try this? Can I do that?" Science teachers say, "Can I teach about you know uh, space?"
Mm-hmm.
uh, Mathematics teachers, they want to teach about certain concepts but do it in a three-dimensional environment to maybe make it more interactive or more fun, or data visualization. And as we start to incorporate this over time, it really does feel like it's not going anywhere. It's even if the progression is slow, it's still really really solid. uh, what do you think is behind that? Is it because teachers are fascinated by new ways of running a classroom? Is there maybe some exhaustion there? Because I believe you said it was 132 minutes in a
And
week,
a whole week,
in a whole week. That's crazy. That's
free
a
time.
little over,
Yeah.
yeah, a little over 2 hours,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like much time at all. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
can imagine the teachers are exhausted, and this new way of doing things must fascinate them.
Well, it's fascinating, but we started our company as a VR company, and we partnered with a lot of VR app providers because they were creating an app. We were trying to network and deploy a whole system, and so we had partnered with a lot of app providers. And we originally focused on VR, but really VR is just the access point. And we started to realize as we looked at everything from the virtual online schools that came out of COVID to the simulations on the PC to the worlds that you can engage in with your phone, and started to really latch on to the idea that immersive learning is a new pedagogical approach. And I think teachers, when you ask, are they fascinated? Yeah, they're fascinated by some of the content that can be produced, but they're also seeing the benefits when their learners get engaged in a material that they've been struggling to get them engaged with for years. CTE, for example, career technical education, the teacher can sit there, the educator can sit there and tell the learner how to fill out a resume, and that there's these career exploration opportunities out there, internships, and they can have people come speak from companies. But if every Friday they got to go into a job shadow on a construction site or in a nuclear facility and actually see work in action and participate in that work via immersive learning, now we have merged and made a hybrid education of practical and the classroom. And I think that is what's behind the kind of the pedagogy of immersive learning, and VR just being one of the technologies that gives you access to that immersive learning. So we switched our entire wording from VR to immersive learning because we're incorporating more partners that are producing things in the simulated environment, whether it's PC, phone, VR headsets, etc.
Yeah. I love being able to do both theory and practice. Both are very, very important. With theory, sometimes can be difficult as it can be a little bit more dry. Again, very, very important. But the practice you talk about, especially the job shadowing, is really amazing. And it does feel that we feel like we can be almost safer and interact with things that we normally couldn't in a real world situation. Like it's hard, if you're out in the middle of nowhere in like the Midwest as an example,
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard to job shadow at certain sites. Do you think that the shortening that distance of experiences and allowing anybody around the world to experience anything in the world is
Mm-hmm.
what really inspires students in the way that it gets them excited about it?
Yeah, I think they actually get to participate and feel a part of it rather than just looking at it from the outside while they're in high school, you know. Um, or in the university setting, you can't go into a nuclear lab, but you can in VR or immersive learning. If you're under 18, you can't go on a construction site because of insurance, but you can with immersive learning and virtual reality. One other aspect to that, you had mentioned science teacher. There's also a cost savings. If you think about the dissection labs that our partner Victory XR has available, 9 different ones, right? It doesn't require formaldehydes or dead carcasses or the entire lab and the scalpels and all the prep that goes into it and all the cleanup. Literally, they come in, they've learned about the dissection ahead of time. They go into the VR simulation. It's guided. They remove organs. They learn about it. And very soon, as of actually today, this morning, they can ask the AI dissection teacher questions about what they're dissecting. And so now it's interactive even more so because you're not just performing an activity, but you can pause the scenario and ask, so where does the squid come from? And the AI knows, right? So really interesting. We're seeing a convergence of technologies for immersive learning.
Yeah. And that's incredibly thrilling. And one thing that I greatly appreciate as well is your organization, what VEDX is doing, especially getting into this part of the field, because I feel we need more people. We need more educators, immersive technology specialists in this field to help push it forward. And the results are really incredible. It does seem that sometimes teachers and institutions and schools get a little bit nervous
Mm-hmm.
because because they see the steps that it takes to get into a headset. Even me and you meeting today, it's very easy because I just turn on my computer, turn on my mic, and then get in.
Right.
It's a lot harder for me to take my Quest 3 and put it on and go through all the different steps and get
Yeah.
used to it and learn about it. But the results are really amazing.
Hmm.
So when you're communicating with educators, are there certain is there a certain communication that you have with them to help put them at ease about the steps it takes to get into the entry point, which is usually virtual reality?
Yeah. That is where we positioned our company to bring all of that together because folks like, Victory XR or Future Class or the Multiverse, they are all specific apps doing a specific function, but we positioned ourselves to partner with those companies and be the person that does speak with the educator, the tech director, the school district administrator, one point of support for all those apps, and one point of consultation and educator training. So we're developing educator training classes in immersive learning. What is it? How do I deploy it? Is it worth the money, the investment to go into it? And then what's it going to take to make it a sustainable and growing pedagogical approach with my current curriculum? Like, those are all big questions that we are faced with answering each day with those educators.
And those are all the right questions. And that's what I love about your organization and love about, how you strategize and how you go about things. And especially following you on LinkedIn for a while now, it is great to see your insights because this is very new to education
Mm-hmm.
still. It's, the tech has been around for a long time, especially and special thanks to Dr. Tom Furness, who founded the Virtual World Society, who helped create who created the super cockpits in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been around for a while, but it really does feel like it's taken a long time for it to blow up as much as it has.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
And it's taken longer than I thought. With COVID, I mean, imagine my optimism in 21 when we're running a language pilot in Panama and a variety of pilots across the United States for immersive classrooms. A lot of co-spaces came up because we didn't have the physical spaces to interact. But then in 22, we had a little bit of a backlash again against the remote technology, virtual technology. Obviously, the online school stayed, and there's some advances in personalized learning that really came from COVID. Um, but it is still intimidating, and it's still taking a lot longer than I thought it would take. And I think a part of that is I think teacher colleges, where the educators are coming out of, need to further embrace. And if you're listening to this and you're at a teacher college, need to further embrace having this as a core part of the curriculum. What is immersive learning? How is it impacting students? Why do learners have a 75% increased retention when they engage with immersive learning and the content? We were just having a conversation yesterday with an app called QuickLearn, and QuickLearn has shown a 15-point increase in the Du Bois County School District in Florida by using this immersive technology with an AI over a semester. And that's impressive for history, right? For history or social studies or a variety of other subjects, but this was focused there. Um, that's what we need to show, and that's what teacher colleges need to start getting their educators that they're graduating familiar with. Like, this is a pedagogical approach to learning, and it will continue to grow, and there'll be a variety of technologies and wearables and 3D assets and WebGL and all the stuff that brings this to the students, but it is a partnership between technology and education.
yeah. And the partnership certainly takes work.
Mm-hmm.
I, but it's so worth it. It feels so worth it, and a lot of organizations, you're so right. A lot of organizations, it was kind of frustrating when, 20 and 21, all of a sudden everything was online.
Yeah.
Everything just switched online with certain exceptions. Obviously you can't eat at a restaurant online. You can't go to the hospital online, but there are certain aspects that really seem to felt like they thrived online. And what I'm curious about is um it does bode well for the technology that the results are so positive. a lot of times they'll see the initial numbers, the colleges and companies and organizations will see the initial numbers of how much it's going to cost to invest in this.
Yeah.
And has research been helpful? Research that organizations have done, such as Stanford research or other universities, have research been really helpful when it comes to pitching this to educators and educational institutions?
To be honest, the research is not robust yet enough. There hasn't been enough studies with a consistent focus on outcomes. And I think so. There is some research out there. Some of it's pretty good. There was a book that just came out. We put it up on LinkedIn. We helped write the chapter with Fabiola from Colorado State University, and um, super interesting. A couple of our advisory board members are at colleges doing research inside of their institution on application and score output, but no real large, robust research has taken place. And I think a lot of that has had to do with the content that's available, right? In this partnership between technology, who is creating what they think is fun for students to engage in, and educators who need LMS integration, easy deployment, privacy and security, the ability to take labs like those dissections. Where do I plug them? Is that for 10th, 11th, and 12th? How do I know? And the technology company needs to say, yes, here is 10th grade, here is 11th grade, here is 12th grade. I mean, according to US general standards for that content. And so I don't know that there's been enough content created to have those robust research studies. And so platforms and content, one pops up every night right now. And so I look forward to more of that taking place. So if you're a researcher, please have a larger research study, grab some of the really impactful content out there, and let's get some more studies around it.
Yeah. I think a big part of the research, it 100% has to do with it. There's not enough of it. It needs to be more robust. We need more educators who are coming from the university K through 12 sector and going into virtual reality, mixed reality, AI, with an understanding of both the pedagogical approach and also the tech approach, and how they marry together really well. And I did notice that there were it was kind of a struggle because as VR, MR, and AI started to come into the mainstream,
Mhm.
a lot of the general public didn't understand it. You know, Zuckerberg comes out with this whole metaverse commercial and
Yeah,
changes to Meta, and suddenly everyone is either excited, confused, or angry. You
right.
know, so there's so many emotions, and now Apple came out with their new device, which has been wonderful, and some people are saying, "Oh, it's not that great." It seems like there's some infighting, arguments, and excitement all kind of combined together. These companies that especially are producing these headsets and these apps, especially as an educator, what do you want them to know? What do you want them to focus more on when it comes to how they are progressing the
Mhm.
technology that's available to all of us?
Yeah, I think the core factor, the core barrier that we've come across is there has not been a headset that has been specifically made for educators that also has access to all of the educational apps. So there's a big disconnect. You've got, Meta and Apple that have had consumer headsets made for the individual, always have to have individual accounts on a lot of different barriers to using it in education, especially access by the students, the educators, etc. Um, uh, and then you have they had the Meta for Business. It was Oculus for Business. They let that go dark for a minute, brought it back up as Meta for Business, but they're still not an educator headset. I have seen Meta's announcements. We're partnered with Meta. We hear about the educator platform and headset possibly for educators and their classes. But we'll see I hope that goes really well, because that is so imperative. Every learner has a mobile device, but we all know that there's a lot of things on that mobile device that we don't want them on.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a mobile device for educators either, right? But everybody has a mobile device. Everybody will have some sort of wearable as we move forward in the future. 10 years from today, mark these words, everybody will have a wearable, because you'll be able to put it on and see AR stuff everywhere. You'll be able to make it go dim and get a virtual reality scenario, location specific. So these things need to take place today from a headset perspective. If they start using it in their education, then they're going to use it for everything,
Yeah.
right? So, but we've got to be able to have those headsets that are available in schools, like in the early 90s when the computers hit. You had computer labs. Well, now everybody has a computer. And computer lab, is that necessary anymore at school? I don't know. Everybody's got a laptop and a Chromebook, so it's not really a lab space. Right now we have VR labs. In the future, that won't necessarily be the case, but I think between now and then we need to be able to have headsets available for access.
Yeah. And these organizations, I would love if they start focusing more on education specific
Mm-hmm.
headsets and devices. And that's really brilliant what you say. We had the computer labs, and then all of a sudden, eventually, everybody has their own computer on hand at, at all times. They have their own laptop, they have their own devices, and
Mm-hmm.
it's become necessary, less of a luxury, more necessary. And
Mm-hmm.
I do greatly appreciate how VEDX and you yourself are pioneering the way when it comes to this education and kind of figuring things out, whether what works, what doesn't work. And I just find it so helpful for that to exist in this industry. And there are a number of professionals that are there's so many in this industry that are starting to come up and are starting to kind of learn. Are there strategies that you want them to know coming into this business, seeing the way technology and education was kind of had a little bit of a disconnect before,
Mm-hmm.
and how it's starting to connect? Is there anything that you've seen that young educators should know as they start to teach and start to incorporate technology in their classrooms?
Well, selfishly, I'll say take our immersive learning course for educators.
Yes.
But other than that, I would say just being really familiar with understanding the difference between devices controlled by a few large hardware companies, applications that are developed for those devices because those are the only devices, but those applications applied in some educator device in the future or on the PC or the Chromebooks have huge impact. And so getting familiar with what those applications are, what they're doing in classrooms, how other educators are using them. And I think that's important too, is joining a network of immersive educators. And we've got a few groups. Every time we bring on an educator, we try to connect them with other educators in immersive learning.
Well, I greatly appreciate the networks that you're creating and the communication that and messaging that you've developed that is incredibly helpful for education. And definitely they should take the VEDX courses and programs, because I think that it can be tremendously beneficial. And we will attach all the links to everything once you have finished listening to this podcast. Please check out all of the links. And Jay, you're such a brilliant individual, and I'm honored to have time with you to talk about this because your insight is so valuable in this industry.
Thanks, Max. That means a lot. I'm a mission-driven person, and I want to see this whole industry come together. There's that pre-chasm point where you've got a lot of motivated individuals, a lot of startups, and if we can lock hands and actually meet the educators where they need to be met in that unwritten partnership and this new pedagogical approach, the learners will benefit. I mean, like you said in the beginning, if you and I had access to some of this stuff when I was in high school, if I could do a virtual reality dissection, or I could ask Leonardo da Vinci about one of his inventions directly in my immersive learning app and see the 3D model pop up in front of me, wow. I mean, so much more interested. History gets context, right? Like sitting on the wall of the Alamo and watching a battle take place is different than reading about it in a textbook. And and that's the other part of this immersive learning journey, is that textbook providers will soon, some of them I know are in partnerships, will soon start having more augmented reality aspects to their book. And again, this is all part of that immersive learning piece that will be education. And I think a lot of teachers, when they first see it, they're like, oh, you're replacing the teacher. No, no, we need the teacher. We need the educators there to facilitate, to help the learners through the content, to assign the syllabuses and get them to critically think, because we can't rely on technology for critical thought. Like, that is an educator's mission, is to inspire critical thinking. And so it's not a replacement. What we want to do with this tech is give a Friday back to every educator. And if you're an educator listening, imagine if you had one Friday back every week, not 132 minutes, but one Friday back, because every Friday your learners went into whichever content you were teaching on their Chromebook or their VR headset or their PC, and had their class there about summarizing and engaging in the content that you just taught them that week.
Well, it's an amazing thought, and I know it will become reality over time with the work that you are doing and the work that VEDX is doing. So thank you for being you and for doing this really amazing work in the industry. And I appreciate you coming on to the Virtual World Society podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and thanks for having me. And I just want to say thanks to all of our partners at VEDX. Victory XR and Future Class and Manage XR and Meta, um, uh, and all the others that are part of our large network of app partners, because we couldn't be doing this if we didn't all work together to do it.
Absolutely. And it creates really amazing, really exciting and engaging results. So this is awesome. Thank you again for coming on the podcast. Once again, you will be able to see all of the links below this podcast to check out the classes and content. I am Maxwell with the Virtual World Society podcast. Once again, you can listen to us every week, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Max.